Okay, evolution of petroleum oil. This project was bang! Ding, that was pretty big. Well, maybe not quite as big as our Big Bang that created the universe, but I'm pretty sure this potato launcher made a pretty good bang. Anyway, let's move on to something that's a little bit more accurate portrayal of the beginning of the universe. Bang! Okay, this is a little bit better. This is probably more like what it looked like 4.56 billion years ago, but heck, the potato launcher was still pretty cool. Anyway, so this is the real start of our presentation. So the story as we know it, it goes within a fraction of a second, the Big Bang caused this immense expansion of the universe. Most theories state that after the Big Bang, at about 10 to the minus 35 seconds, the universe expanded exponentially. Some experts say that this expanded, the universe expanding could have expanded at the rate of about 10 to the 60th seconds. That's pretty fast, and it happened within a fraction of a second. It's almost unimaginable, but it happened. Okay, so here's the life of our universe just 3 minutes after the Big Bang. Extremely hot, it was still very dense, and when matter finally became fixed, then we got our very first elements, and those were hydrogen and helium. Pretty awesome. Okay, now fast forward probably a few million years or so, we get our very first life forms, and these are cyanobacteria, and they're the very first life forms on Earth. They are a prokaryote cell, and there's evidence that these are our very first life forms because they were found in Archean rocks in Australia, and they date back to some 3.5 billion years ago. Okay, well, I told you about our very first two elements that we got, which were, of course, helium and hydrogen, but what I really want to get to talking about is carbon, because carbon is life. Carbon is everything. We are all made out of carbon, and just about everything in the world around us is made out of carbon, so it's pretty darn important. And now, once we officially got carbon in the world, now I have told you about the two ingredients that we need to make the recipe of petroleum oil, which is carbon and hydrogen. Okay, so like I'm telling you guys, carbon is awesome. It comes in so many different forms, such as coal here. Carbon's a very flexible atom, which that gives it the ability to bond many different ways, and it loves to bond with itself. Okay, so now that I told you about carbon, now we're putting carbon and hydrogen together and we're creating hydrocarbons. The most simplest type of hydrocarbons are alkanes. And we have methane, ethane, propane, and butane for the most common types. The simplest would be, of course, methane, which is 1 carbon and 4 hydrogen. Okay, so now that I've told you about hydrocarbons, now I'm going to tell you about how we get petroleum oil, because basically that's what petroleum is hydrocarbons. But how did we get it? How did it form? Where did it come from? Well, it came millions of years ago in the form of plankton, which is sea plants and animals that died, floated to the bottom of the sea floor because they lived in the sea. Sedimentary rock formed on top of them, and over millions of years, they ended up forming oil and gas deposits due to heat and pressure, and the rock metamorphosized, creating oil deposits under the seabed.
These two oil rigs, one in the water and one on the land, are how we extract the oil that is hidden in the pockets down deeper in the earth. Here's an example diagram of how underwater oil drilling works and how they get the oil from underneath the ocean. As you can see by this pie chart here, there are a few different types of oil that are gathered from around the world. The first kind we have here is oil sands, which makes up roughly 30% of the world's oil reserves, and they are known for having a high viscous property, and they're almost solid at room temperature. Another 30% is conventional oil, which is used for most automobile oils and has a much lower viscosity than all the other ones. and then 15% is heavy oil, and then the remaining 25% is extra heavy oil. And the heavy oils are just more viscous and take longer to refine into more usable oils. Now I'm going to talk about the history of oil use and how humans have used it over the years. Not much has really changed except for how we refine it into different compounds and how we gather it. One of oil's oldest known uses was making asphalt, dated to as early as 6,000 years ago. This asphalt was used as mortar in early brick buildings to secure their houses, and it was also used to waterproof things like boats, baths, and even pottery. It was also used to secure handles to early weapons and tools. And about 2,000 years ago, the Chinese started using oil for things like heating and light in their homes. Jumping ahead a bit, the 19th century was arguably the most important time in petroleum innovation. This century sparked the invention of the kerosene lamp in 1854, as well as the production of kerosene through crude oil instead of coal. The demand for oil skyrocketed even more with the invention of the electric light bulb, and this need would only continue to grow. In the beginning of the 20th century, the need for petroleum increased even more when the first mass-produced gas-powered car was released in 1901. Gasoline became the new kerosene. It was used everywhere and was even used to power military ships, tanks, and planes, proving that it was not only a great energy source but a military asset as well. Nowadays, oil is used everywhere for all types of things. It is still the main form of power for most vehicles, and it's still used in asphalt to make the roads that we drive on smoother. It is also used in almost all the products that we use that contain synthetic materials like plastic. Today's scientists are looking at a way to see if we can recycle the plastics that we have thrown away into landfills back into petroleum, because if we keep using the amount of oil that we use today, eventually we won't have enough to sustain that. So why not try to recycle some of the oil already used and have more? Thank you for watching. Here are the sources we used, and we hope you enjoyed.